Describe one great... This is a real challenge for you.
I thought you were going to... Are you going to ask me how big is Batista's...
No, but if you really feel strongly you want to talk about it.
No, but the way you set it up, I think, oh, he's for sure he's going to ask me, how big is Batista?
You're going to wish I asked you that. This is your challenge. Describe one great or good idea that Vince Russo had in WCW.
I got nothing. I'm digging. I don't. By the way, I don't hate anybody. I'll call people out on their when they deserve it, but I'm genuinely. I firmly believe that hating someone or letting someone get into your head, unless it's Dave Meltzer,
don't start.
It's like carrying around extra weight on your back all day long. It's just stupid waste of energy. So I'm trying really hard to answer that question in a way that doesn't sound hateful or resentful of Vince Russo. But the fact is, he never came up with a good idea in his life.
Well, I'll do a follow up because we have a magazine in W.H. Smith, Inside the Ropes magazine, and we had Finn Martin of Power Slam do an interview with Vince Russo on the phone. We set it up; it was all good, and they do a sort of 6-minute interview, and then Russo is insistent that the Bloodline storyline is, and Finn tries to politely and amicably kind of go through it, and Russo refuses to let him away until he agrees that the Bloodline storyline is bad, and when Finn wouldn't do it, he hung up the call. 7 minutes in. So that's Vince Russo in 2023. But I am curious about Russo as someone who I got asked once to do a show with Vince Russo, and I refused. And the reason I refused was because I get the sense that if you were to talk to him about some of the bad ideas or the criticisms, he just wouldn't accept it.
No, he cracks.
But you are someone who does accept the negative, the criticisms, and you do. Why do you think you're able to accept it and sort of make money out of it compared to Vince, who is really resistant to any sort of criticism?
Confidence. If you've ever been in a position of coming up with good ideas for a living, if you're a professional and you're a creative person and you make your living with coming up with great ideas, inevitably, half of the ideas you're going to come up with are going to suck. You can't be in the business of coming up with great ideas without coming up with some bad ones. Nobody bats a thought. Well, it's a U.S. thing for baseball, but nobody wins 100% of the time. If you're lucky, if you're awesome as a creative person, whether you're a writer, a director, feature films, television, author, whatever it is, actor, actress, if you're in a performing arts business and you can get to 50% of the time you're doing good, you rock. There's not an actor or an actress out there, there's not a director, there's not a writer, there's not a movie studio, there's not a wrestling booker, there's not a performer out there that hasn't bombed. It's part of the process. But if you're so insecure as a human being, and deep down inside you're an imposter, and you're really not that good, that's when people like Vince Russo crack and hang up phones on people because they're just not willing to discuss it. It's too painful for them. They know they're weak. They know they're a fraud. They know they're not real. Therefore, they don't want to have that conversation because they don't want to expose it to anybody. If I hit 50-50, I'm happy. Some of my ideas are going to bomb. I'm going to learn from them. I'm not going to do them again. And that's the other thing. I love to talk about this. There's nothing to do with wrestling. It's life. You can't go through life being afraid to fail. You just cannot, no matter what you do. Kenny, if you were afraid to fail at promoting your own shows and your own live events, I wouldn't be here with my wife having the time of my life. If you were afraid to fail. If I would have been afraid to fail, I would have never taken the job in WCW to begin with. You just, It's okay to fail as long, you don't want to do it every time, but if you try something, if you take a risk, if you put yourself out there, even though the odds are against you, and you know it, but you're going to do it anyway, and if it doesn't go the way you hoped it would, as long as you learn something from it, it gives you more value. It increases your odds of success the next time. I believe that firmly. But someone who is not, if you have an imposter syndrome because you know you're really not that good at your job and you just got that job because of whatever, you're not going to want to talk about your mistakes. I would rather talk about my failures than my mistakes. I've learned way more from my failure. Sometimes success is just coincidence. I ended up in a wrestling business. It's sheer coincidence. It wasn't because I aspired to be in the wrestling business. I didn't dream about being in the wrestling business. I was a sales manager for a commercial food processor, for Christ's sake. And nothing. I loved wrestling. I enjoyed wrestling. I would say I loved it. I enjoyed it as a fan, but I never dreamed I'd be in the wrestling business. But through a series of coincidences and because of timing and fate, I happened to get a unique opportunity. And I happened to be able to make the most of it. And I failed along the way until I get even bigger opportunities. And I learned from them. A guy like Vince Russo looks at life much differently, and he wants to hide his mistakes and lie about his mistakes or pretend that they didn't exist because he doesn't have the balls to confront the fact that sometimes you just f*** up. It's life.